figure very prominently in your argument and in many of your concerns. And Professor Kossman has obviously set out a number of the issues in terms of what the laws actually say. You cited in response a number of legal experts, and one of the things about legal experts is there are a lot of them and they often don't agree. But in law, we tend to distinguish between the law as it is and the law as we would like it to be. And the experts you cited seem to be critical of the law as it is. Along with you. But does Professor Kossman's outlining of some of the elements of C-16 in particular, does that give you any comfort? Does it allay any of your concerns that it really focuses on the advocacy of genocide or the commission of hate crimes, and that those kinds of things are probably the sort of restrictions that most people in the room would think were reasonable restrictions?
No, it doesn't give me any comfort. And the reason it doesn't give me any comfort is because, as far as I'm concerned, what this is actually about has already played itself out in my case, and I already explained that to you. I want to tell you some of the pernicious things about the legislation, and this is.
And do you mean C-16? Is that what you're
actually?
talking
I
about?
mean the policy guidelines that it will be interpreted within, because the legislation itself is only a couple of paragraphs, and it looks innocuous, but you know. I would say a legal doctrine is something like a virus, and it has a life.
That's not what we think.
If you let it go into a living system, it propagates and it has effects, and the effects are a consequence of the philosophy that's embedded inside the law. And if you really want to know about this, you should read Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, because what he does in that book is tell you how the hypothetically humane doctrines that were embedded in radical Marxism at the end of the 1800s unfolded into Soviet society and demolished it, along with many other societies, I might point out. And he won the Nobel Prize for that for no small reason, and was regarded as one of the people who brought down the Soviet Union. And so it's a masterpiece, that book, and this is a complex issue, and to understand it, you have to do that sort of reading. But I want to tell you a little bit about what the law does, and this is with regards to its interpretation from the policy guidelines. It instantiates social constructionism into our legal system. You have to understand what that means. There's a huge debate about how human identity is upon what grounds human identity is predicated. Now, the radical social constructionists basically say that identity is nothing but a social construction, and that's in keeping with their philosophical doctrines, partly Marxist and partly postmodern. But that isn't, and that was what I was objecting to with regards to Bill C-16, because it insists, do you understand this? It makes this legal doctrine that biological sex, gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation vary independently. And they don't. Now, the reason they don't is because 98% of people, it's 99.7% of people, by the way, at least with regards to the most credible statistics, have a gender identity that's essentially identical with their biological sex. And almost everybody who is male and female by biological sex and gender identity dresses that way, and that's what gender expression essentially is. And then if you stack those three things on top of each other, they're basically isomorphic. You can add sexual orientation to that, and 98% of people are heterosexual. So the idea that those things vary independently is absolutely preposterous. But it's written into the law, and that has terrible consequences. You see, I don't know, for example, now, to what degree any discussion in universities of the biological differences between men and women are legal. And you think, oh, well, that's an exaggeration. It's like, well, I debated Nicholas Matt, I believe that was his name, a professor at the University of Toronto on TVO's The Agenda, and he said right out for everyone to hear that the scientific consensus is that there's no biological differences between men and women. And I've received letters from people who've told me that now the social justice activist types are complaining about the fact that the biologists assign biological sex to animals because it's only a social construct that we're projecting onto their being. And you know, we just heard that the chromosomal level of analysis is complex. It's not that complex. What we have is a bimodal distribution with a tiny number of exceptions, and that, by the way, is not a spectrum. You see,
so
these
Professor
words.
Peterson, sorry, we're at the end.
Oh yes, okay.
Yeah, you'll have other questions.
No problem.